INDOT can do it. I could reach out to them later on this morning and see if they can take a look at it. But that seems like something. But as far as development is concerned, the development always happens. Roads happen. But engineers, smart enough people to figure that type of stuff out. And as long as you're in a community that has also a knowledgeable engineer, which Hammond does, I don't see that as being a problem. And quite honestly, where the stadium is supposed or potentially being built would be so close to Lake Michigan, the water doesn't really go into the tributaries. It would go straight into Lake Michigan. So there is no tributaries where it really gets stopped. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I was just curious about that because, all these data centers and all these, soft lands are getting paved, the water usually soaks into the ground. And I was just curious, all this development, it concerns me about, the flooding situations, but I'm going to let you go. But you've had a good show this morning. I enjoyed listening to you, and just have a safe and dry day.
I appreciate it. And I'm glad that you brought up data centers because, there's a lot of misinformation about data centers. We got a phone call. I really would like to talk about
finish your thought.
No. I mean,
I was just giving you the sign.
No,
Please
I appreciate it.
thought.
No, I appreciate it. It's just data centers. I think there's a lot of people that have some understanding and misconceptions, and everyone's like, "Well, you're developing on farm field." Well, more than likely, in most of these communities, I will say in Hobart or in the one in South County, like your house wasn't there probably in the 1800s. So you're putting a data center, and it's just the fact that there is a bad stigma on data centers. I think there's a lot of positive there. And I think, quite honestly, the use of water has been greatly exaggerated by some people that simply don't want them. I get it that if you live next door, no one wants to live next door to something, but I think there's ways to offset that. And certainly I'd like to get into data centers. I'd actually bring some people in that do this for a living. But as far as I'm knowledgeable about, data centers don't really cause any extensive issues with water. And just because it's a farm field, it could just as easily be a housing district. So thank you, Joe, partner Joe here, my co-host today. What you got here on line, we'll call it 3.
We have, I don't know. Good morning. You're on the air. Who is this?
Wolf. That previous call was brought to you by Sherwin-Williams, watching tape drive.
Well, that happens. We all can't be dynamic. I'm not dynamic. Right now It's 8:21, and I'm holding on from waking up so early this morning, so it'll be a long day. But I hope that the Frappuccino will push me through.
Mr. Ripe, you're a political bigwig. What are your thoughts on this Peggy Katona thing?
I'm a political bigwig. I think you got the wrong Ripe, but I was in elected office. As far as I read, the thing is this. I'll be very honest. Most elected officials don't do the work in the office. And it's going to sound weird, but their job is to be an administrator. They administer, they make sure that things are going the way they're supposed to be going. Some elected officials are more active than others. I have only read what probably you all read. I haven't really caught up with any people down in the county, although I do have to go to the county, I think, tomorrow to get more information. But, the general 95% of the work happens with the employees that are out there. And I worked in the auditor's office, so we know what we had to do, and it had to be done. As far as, she had injuries, as far as what I know, what I've read, I haven't talked to her in probably 10 years. But as far as, it's just really whether they're doing their job or not doing their job. That's the way I look at it. If you want to look at elections, does a sheriff have to be a police officer, or do they have to be an administrator? Can they be just a regular citizen that has
This is Phil Potempa, and welcome to another edition of Notoriety. Each week, as your host, we bring you the events that you want to make sure you mark in the calendar, what's not to be missed, and everything happening in Northwest Indiana, Chicagoland, and beyond. It's the broadcast equivalent of all the stories, feature columns that appear in the flagship Post-Tribune, and also find their way into other parts under the umbrella that is Chicago Tribune Media. Everything, of course, captured at chicagotribune.com. I couldn't be here for these past 9 years for our weekly broadcast without the generosity, underwriting, and support of our friends at People's Bank. Also, Arts Advocates Andy and Sue Arnold, they do so much for all of our different outreach of the arts community in Northwest Indiana and beyond. And over the years, we have a history with everybody from Legacy Foundation, Indiana Arts Commission. So we're grateful to all of you, and especially you, our viewers and our listeners. Some of you are tuned in through our traditional radio dial as we broadcast to you today on this 21st of April, 2026. In case you're hearing this as a rebroadcast, you can plan accordingly. As we come to you from our Strachan Van Til studios in Hammond. And we also keep in mind that some of you have the added advantage, besides being on the radio dial tuned in at 1230, as we come to you from our Strachan Van Til studios. Others of you have the added advantage of our window to the world with the cameras in our studio. And you can see it looks like it should be spring gardening time as the gnomes, starting with the G, have taken over our studio desk along with our friends around the table, including today's co-host, Luke Miller. Welcome back, Luke.
Good morning.
We have also with us one of the directors of the production that we're talking about today from our friends at Holdcraft Players, Tony Thomas.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Good morning.
And we have with us also Jerry McClure.
Hello.
And he's one of the cast members. I'm going to give the title and let you introduce exactly our title and our dates, Tony.
The title of the show is Lost, Then Found in the Middle of Nowhere, and it's spelled Gnowarre.
So that play on the word
Yes.
gnome, right?
And it's the home of the gnomes, and it's a town in southeastern Ohio that have embraced their interesting spelling of their name.
And if you're thinking, I don't know if I've ever heard this title before, you shouldn't have heard about it, because this is a
World premiere.
happening at our friends at Holdcraft Players to the east, Michigan City, Indiana. They had their opening weekend that happened this past weekend, which be the weekend of the 18th. On one more weekend of performances, brand new original story and script written by
Lisa Rawson. She was pushing her shows over Facebook, and Jay Swindell, one of the cast members, saw it, and he forwarded it to Jill and myself and said, hey, give this a read.
And where's she based out of?
She's just outside of Erie, Pennsylvania.
Okay, Erie, Pennsylvania. You have a partner in crime for this as the director duties, and that would be?
Jill, my wife.
Yeah, she's a little off camera here, and she's here for moral support. So we have Jill and Tony at the helm. World premiere, Lost and Found in the Middle of Nowhere. And the no, again, starts with a G-N. So this is something that's brand new. One more weekend to go. Comedy, drama, fresh, original. And the synopsis, even when I included in my column, Luke and I were discussing, it involves an airport, and then you also get to hear the thoughts of the lead. There's a lot going on, so I'm going to let one of you two describe it, and also give us a reminder, what is the part that you play?
Okay, so the play takes place at a small, very small airport in a very small town. A big city boy gets stranded in a small town, and his rental car breaks down, and he ends up in the airport that has two employees. And he's expecting, normal airline rental car counter. That's not really what he encounters. But it's really funny. And yes, you do hear his inner monologue as he is reacting to the small town and the people there. You hear Noel Carlson plays the inner voice of his sarcastic, what he really wants to say but doesn't, which I think we all have from time to time.
And I see some of the promo photos that our producer Joey is flashing and floating across. There are gnomes aplenty throughout here as well, so there's no shortage, including what we have here on our deskscape as well. Now, there's not any confusion here. This isn't some kind of a Dungeons and Dragons fantasy where the airport is run by gnomes.
No.
It just happens to sort of symbolically describe what is a very small, rural, backwards.
And
kind of
the gnomes are the school mascot in the town.
Okay.
So that's where all the gnomes come in.
And that's where that plays in as well.
Go ahead.
So was there inspiration, or rather, what was the inspiration for creating this show that you could garner from Lisa? And was it based on something from her experience, or what was that?
Was she
from?
involved? Yeah. Did she give you any
that's-
nudges or talk you in a little bit?
The beauty of it was Jill read the script, and I always go with whatever Jill says, and she said, yes, this is funny, and it'll be a really good show. So we talked to Lisa. She let us go ahead and do it, and we've been in constant contact with her about this might not work. Can we try it like this? Absolutely. We want to change a couple words. Absolutely. She's been nothing but positive. We did a Zoom meeting with her, and she bases everything on her own experiences. So this has a little bit of truth to it.
Did she come for the opening weekend?
She'll be here Friday night.
She'll be here on Friday night.
Yes.
That's going to be exciting for the playwright to see, again, world premiere. So she put a lot of the creative nuance in your hands. If this shaped and it is the way that she had expected it to come, although you said she helped with some of the fine tuning, and she was pretty fluid with saying, hey, if it works better this way, go ahead and give it a try.
She's been wonderful every time we've had a suggestion. Of course, we're mapping this whole thing. We have no idea.
Yeah.
She has no idea, really, just except what's in her head. So the fact that we're doing it in a new space that she did not envision when she was writing it. So she's been very positive and very, very, very helpful with her ideas and working with us.
It seems she's very involved in her own small town community theater where she is at. So when she writes plays, typically we seem to get the impression that her group, her little theater troupe, seems to put the shows on that she writes. This was one that was fresh and hadn't been done at all when she sent it to Jill, and so we were kind of able to get our arms around it without them even having put it up yet. So I think
And with it being so new, not even help with the licensing house, it was right from the hands of the playwright.
She has her own production company.
She has her own. Wow,
she
okay.
is in charge of everything.
If you're just tuning in and you're hearing our dialogue and you're hearing things about gnomes and you're hearing about stage debut and world premieres, that's because we have the added advantage here in Northwest Indiana for what is not just the Midwest premiere of Chicagoland, but the world premiere for Lost and Found in the middle of nowhere. And think of that nowhere being spelled like a gnome. It's such a small little quaint burg where this airport happens to be, that a very frustrated traveler gets stranded and he's dealing with what are the locals. You get the inside track by hearing those thoughts inside the lead character's head, which is played by...
the main character is Jay Swindell, and then the inner voice is Noel Carlson.
So the inner voice we hear over an actual speaker.
No.
He's on stage.
He's on stage
he's
with
an actor
him.
on stage with us.
Really?
Yeah.
And plays it. So a very fresh and creative concept.
That was the beauty. Lisa's idea was to have him off stage.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept seeing him walking around the entire area, into the audience and everywhere. But we honed it down to where it's probably less intrusive.
Yeah.
But you get the great idea of who it is. And
Yeah,
she
kind
was
of
very
immersive.
Yes, she was very open to it as well.
Great.
Well, I'm very intrigued to hear about, just the small town nature of it. I think that really lends itself to the comedy. The fact that there's so many, in small towns, that the characters and the personalities of people just tend to be, even exacerbated, and that they just tend to shine through. So I'm sure that really lends itself to the comedy.
Yeah, and so then the people that are in the town know each other very well. They know the little quirks, which seems very odd for somebody from a big city who works all the time, for people to be that close and know each other that well. So
If you have the advantage and you're streaming and you saw the gnomes and you found us through social media or through the YouTube channel that we have here with WJOB, you might see then the logo that is associated with the show. Very clever. It includes the outline of the state of Ohio because that's where this teeny tiny burg is. Did that come with it as part of the licensing package, or no? You had folks that created this logo for this world premiere.
That was Lisa's.
That was Lisa.
Gave that, yes.
It's very enticing. It's very fun.
And that unfortunately doesn't transfer well onto a T-shirt. But
Yeah.
it was really nice.
We talked about this before we went live on the air, and this is the blessing, the curse of what is a world premiere. Say that title again, Jerry. What's the title?
Lost and Then Found in the Middle of Nowhere.
That just rolls right off the tongue. Well, maybe sort of not. If you've heard of A Chorus Line, you heard of a Music Man, Oklahoma, this is one you've not heard of. So when it's a world premiere, you've got the hook and the advantage for marketing, meaning that nobody's ever seen it. It's exciting. Come and see what is maybe a work in progress. Yeah. She might very well, she being the playwright, make some changes based on what she sees this weekend, right?
She's already told us she's going to take a few of ours, but we don't get credit for it.
But she was going to say, so there should be somebody on that first page, Jill and Tony.
We do get that on every script after this. We do get our cast listed.
Right, because this is where that premiere was. Yes. That is true, where it had its premiere. But to be able to market it, as I mentioned, when I was even writing it for the column, I thought, gosh, this is kind of a tough one to explain. And also, having never seen it, and I've seen quite a bit in my 30 years, I didn't want to give away anything that could be a tease as well. So I was letting you do the description of it. How far off was I? You can see when I brought in my diorama here, what I would envision it to be for Nowhere. And we'll see if we get our producer, Joey, to use the robot camera and zoom into this landscape of gnomes, and they're farming, and there's a little water windmill, and there's a cabbage patch, which I love that part of it there. This is not at all what you're going to see. So when folks are saying, "Oh, you know what? I collect gnomes. I want to see what this is about." Again, not a fantasy Dungeons and Dragons type of a thing. This is something that takes its inspiration from the idea, conceptually and symbolically, small town, and there are gnomes, as you say, because it's the mascot for the local school.
Yeah,
but don't expect it to be them living inside a wood hollow and not Lord of the Rings. I guess Lord of the Rings has some elves and underworld folk, but the Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, right? That's what I'm thinking.
The town embraces gnomes because it was the high school mascot. So everyone has a gnome. We have a gnome of the month at the airport. So you will be immersed in gnomes. It's just not about gnomes.
And there's plenty of branding right around this desk here. I'm seeing green T-shirts that have the show premiere. This is wonderful. Our director's got his director's hat on, and again, I think it's a clever premise, and word of mouth is so big for something like this as well. So the audience is left talking about it. Have you given a lot of promotion that the playwright is going to be there, or she might be of the nature of, I don't want to lie, I just want to kind of slip in, see it, make my notes, or she's saying, I'll do a Q&A afterwards.
She's been open. She and her husband are coming, and they're planning on just being involved in everything.
Okay.
And I also want to mention that we are also partnering with the Michiana Humane Society. Where it's $5 of every ticket. Remember, our tickets are only $15, which you don't hear very often anymore.
That's right.
But $5 from every ticket sale goes to the Michiana Humane Society.
And our remaining dates for this, no matter when you're hearing, because it could be a rebroadcast, are, again, it's coming up. I see some afternoon and evening performances.
Yeah, we have the 24th and 25th at 7 p.m., and then the 26th, Sunday matinee at 2 p.m.
So Friday and Saturday are your evening performances. Sunday will be that final matinee. If you want to be there when the playwright is in town, and the playwright hails from
Erie, Pennsylvania.
Yet she opted to set this in Ohio. Yes. So we'll just leave that alone. But Ohio might have an idea of folks being from smaller areas and have their own ideas at times, because it's an awfully large state. For all of us that have had to drive across to Ohio, that is a trek and not exactly. So to be a traveler stranded there,
Pennsylvania's no slouch either to drive across. But
that's a few miles to put it in there. So that's what you want to make sure you plan around if you want to be there for that playwright experience. That's Friday night that's going to happen, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you say, wait a minute, Holdcraft, I know Dune Summer Theater, I know Footlight Players, 4th Street. Holdcraft is in an old high school auditorium, right?
The old Elston High School. It's right next door to the YMCA.
Yeah, so it's right there, not too far, a stone's throw off of 421 in Michigan City. Very easy to get to. You're going to be okay on this one. If you want to buy tickets at the door, you can.
Yes.
Doing it in advance, where are they going? What website? What phone number?
YPTCinc.com for the tickets. And we prefer you just buy them online or at the door.
Yeah, online gives them an idea of how to know how many folks are coming. But if you want to show up, this one you can take a chance on. I often say if you're going to maybe Footlight or Canterbury, those are more intimate spaces, and you may not have the seat availability for the inventory, but this one you're okay with. The last thing that you had done at Holdcraft was what, Tony?
We did Dial M for Murder last
That's right,
year.
that's right.
Yes.
And how about the last time for you, Jerry, that you've done?
I was in
Holdcraft?
Dial M for Murder with the Thomas I, but the last thing I did there was Tracers in the fall, the play about the Vietnam War.
That's right, that is right.
Yeah. That was the last time I was here as well.
Yeah, that's right, joining us around the desk here. So we have to at least include one tough Larry King, Joan Rivers question. What was one thing, and Jill might have to jump up and tell you off screen in case you can't think of one. What was one thing that you did want to tweak or change, or it wasn't working, or at least the way it's described, it didn't make sense to you, and you wanted to change it, and the playwright said that's one thing I need you to keep, because it builds, and she explained why I wrote it that way, leave it that way. Anything?
There's one time they have a sign about who's the employee of the month, and we wanted to change it to Gnome of the Month. And she said, no, you can't do that because it doesn't work with the idea of the show. So after we revisited the idea, she was absolutely right, and we changed it, and we found one of the gnomes on set who became Gnome of the Month.
Because the humor there is there's so few employees
Yeah,
at
there.
the airport to have employee of the
Yeah.
month. The humor there is.
I didn't want to give it away
We have
because
gnomes everywhere. So she
Right.
was saying it sort of the joke doesn't really land if there's 30 gnomes on the set.
Right,
So
right.
that was
Yeah.
And I interpret that differently, thinking that anybody in that burg is a gnome because that's the mascot. So, but it would be the folks working there.
actually that was part of her idea too, was that anybody could have an employee of the month or gnome of the month. Any place could have a
Right.
gnome of the month, and then it defeats the purpose of the joke. So,
keep it
Yes.
this way. And again, how about as directors? Was there any time you had to fine tune a line with either the identity that is the conscience that's walking around and telling the thoughts, where you had to say, I think he's being a little more sarcastic, or don't be afraid to make that sound a little bit more snippy or snarky or sharp.
that was with pretty much the entire cast. Noel Carlson, who plays the inner voice, he is not a very sarcastic person at all. So this was a stretch and a half for him, and he reached it. He did a very good job. Kaylee Weinbrenner, who plays the lead, is supposed to be this elderly, wonderful grandmother-ish character, and Kaylee's 25, 26 years old, and she brought in her own sarcasm, but then comes back to be sweet little Donna, and it's back and forth. And even Mike Colburn, who plays Stan, he adds his little snarkiness to it sometimes. And Jack Olson comes in, and he gets very upset when Jay Swindell is a Seahawks football fan, and Jack is a Steelers fan, and they have a little
in real life.
No, that's a play.
The characters.
Yes.
This is part of that's built in the script.
They have a little rivalry that gets a little snarky in there. And
Okay.
we pushed them to the edge, and it's not necessarily in the script, but when you see it live, it makes a huge difference.
It works.
Yeah,
It's a cast of how many people total? Remind me.
7.
7 people. And have you found this as a director, or it can be a question for anybody around the desk, or even with our producer? I have found, as somebody who taught for the last 25, 30 years at Purdue and also at VU, today's younger folks, because of technology and so much communication is through text, sarcasm and wit is almost a lost art where it doesn't always register, and folks may not understand, because if it's done through text, it's not going to be. And so if they haven't been exposed to it, I would mention things in class and try to get a chuckle. And sometimes some folks just didn't understand because they're not used to it. Have you noticed that with some of your younger cast members, or that it falls on deaf ears?
Well, I would say it, but Kaylee is a natural at it, so she has a perfect. I send it back to Luke. What do you think?
No, I agree totally with Phil here. I think that, when I grew up, I had a lot of my parents, both of them were very sarcastic. So we had a lot of sarcasm in our household. So I've become very sarcastic, but other people around me, it flies over their head for the most part. But as you say, that they're growing up with technology, and it's a lot harder to convey that nuance through a screen. I mean, you can put emojis and whatnot to try to have an altered meaning, but again, it isn't the same. So then as you grow older, then you just try to develop it more, but...
Or the art of used to call it a dry wit.
Yeah.
Dry wit, dry
Through
sense
text
of humor.
message would not work. Wouldn't really work.
Exactly.
Right?
We need to resurrect Don Rickles. Have him come back and do some classes on this for all of us. Anything else we have? Go ahead. Thoughts in closing here?
I just want to give a shout out to Sarah Riegling as well, who's Maggie in the show. I think we went through everyone else's names, but Sarah, she's hilarious as Maggie.
Yeah, some of the promo art we did, we wanted to make sure we classify. This was still early on. This is script reading. You'll see they still have their scripts in their hand. Did folks pick up pretty quick with it, or did you have to be firm as director, or who was maybe good cop, bad cop between Jill and you to say, you've got to be off book by Thursday. I got to have you off book.
We have to get one thing straight. Jill's always the good guy. I'm the bad guy. Okay,
but, the worst guy.
Yeah, the worst.
The worst guy.
But we were limited to 4.5 weeks to get this show done.
Jay and Kaylee came off of the Da Vinci Code at 4th Street, and Sarah and I were coming off of Into the Woods from LaPorte Little Theater. So we went straight from our performance weekends of our shows prior into this, and we had very little time to get it all done.
They really came together. Arturo Pozos and I put the set together as quickly as we could because we had other things happening at the Holdcraft Center happening, so we couldn't jump right in and build it. We're in the band room where we did Dial M for Murder. This is the second show there.
Okay.
But we repainted, we retiled, we redid pretty much the whole thing to make it a black box theater. And by the time we were set to start actually getting into the theater, we were down to 4.5 weeks.
Wow, yeah, that is a quick dash to the finish line.
Yeah,
we got there.
Make it all happen.
We did.
Yeah,
we got
absolutely.
there. But it was
well, and that's why I was kind of surprised. Usually, you're pretty good about a lot of promo photos up front, and I noticed they weren't forthcoming. It was more script reading. That's because you were still doing finishing touches and.
We were down to the edge, and then, as usual, the theater gods got together and said,
it always comes together. But again, my hat's off. I said this to Luke and many folks. How so many talented cast members can be in one existing show, auditioning for other shows, and get the lines down for both shows. And luckily, while you're in the middle of nowhere, you're not doing the dialogue from Cat on the Hot Tin Roof, Tennessee Williams, and get the crossover mixed up. As our final wrap-up and review, somebody be the Vanna White here and give us the name, dates, so it's a world premiere course, that playwright opportunity, and then phone number, website.
Yep, so we're the Holdcraft Players in Michigan City. We're doing Lost, Then Found in the Middle of Nowhere, a world premiere by Lisa Rawson. And your opportunities left to see it are this Friday and Saturday, the 24th and 25th at 7 p.m., and the Sunday matinee, the 26th at 2 p.m. And Lisa will be in attendance on Friday night, the 24th at 7.
Every ticket, $5, goes to the Humane Society of Michiana.
And phone number, website, did we have that one more time, just in case?
YPTCINC.com, or just look up Holdcraft Players.
And I'm speaking to all of our listeners and viewers here. You are a key part of this equation with the excitement that is a world premiere and an opening night, especially when the playwright is right there. That playwright is going to be gauging this interaction of the audience. What worked, what didn't work, what really seemed like it resonated with them, what seemed like it was an awkward eternity of silence when they thought perhaps there might be laugh or humor or an audience connection. So you can bet that'll all be gauged, and you will be the exciting part of what is the molded crafting of a script that'll be fine-tuned for this brand new world premiere, Lost and Found in the Middle of Nowhere. So we look forward to it being right around the corner. Is there a quick title we need to preview for what's up next with Holdcraft?
Jill and I are directing the Seussification of Romeo and Juliet for the Young People's Theater.
So is this Romeo and Juliet done in a Dr. Seuss type form?
Ish.
All right.
Adjacent.
It just means you need to come back and share more of those details.
Will.
And great, we love anything for young audiences because they are our future adult audiences. As we just discussed again before we went on the IR, all of our theater seats need to be filled. It's a chance for diversion, for learning, and for a community experience. And art in its original form that happens just that one time when they're taking those bows. No two performances will ever be alike. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining us.
Thank you.
Co-host Luke Miller for being here. Also to Joey for being our producer. We appreciate it. And most of all to you, our viewers and our listeners, for being part of our broadcast of Notoriety. We'll be back again next week. Until then,